Uh, all right. Welcome everyone to Unity Clear Lake Spiritual Center in Lower Lake. And Bill Barrows is going to start the service with a joy song. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, we'll give it a shot. Love letters straight from your heart keep us so near while apart. I'm not alone in the night when I can have all the love you write. I memorize every line. I kiss the name that you sign, and darling, then I read again right from the start. Love letters straight from your heart. I memorize every line. I kiss the name that you sign, and darling, then I read again right from the start. Love letters straight from your heart. Did that come through okay?
Yes, it did. It was
Oh, good.
wonderful. And I forgot once I start humming, which is often what I do if I don't sing with you, Phil. That's why we mute our sound people so that Barbara can do whatever she wants to do. And so we're going to continue this service now with Reverend Bob, and he is zooming all the way from Sacramento, and we welcome him, and he is going to give us the opening prayer, followed by Bill singing what? Surely the Presence and the Lord's Prayer. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara and Bill and Tina and Unity Clear Lake Center folks who are watching today and either in person or later on YouTube. And let's open in prayer like any good Unity event that we're stepping. So I invite you to just close your eyes, sit comfortably on whatever chair you're sitting on, take a nice big breath of air in, and release it with a sigh, releasing any cares or concerns or worries. And we can be here fully present, listening to this wonderful music, this wonderful message, and knowing that we are here by divine appointment. We are here by divine appointment. And we make this connection to our spiritual connection to our hearts, no matter where we are in this world. And we're grateful for this wonderful little spiritual center up in Lower Lake and for this wonderful technology. It allows us to connect and communicate wherever we are in this world. And with a grateful and thankful heart, all God's children said together, thank you, God. Thank you, God. So it is. Amen.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the light is in this place. I can feel her mighty power and her grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the light is in this place. way. And the Lord's Prayer. Our Father and Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Oh, amen.
Thank you, Bill. Gorgeous. Thank you so much. So I would like to continue now to read our invocation affirmation. This is who we are. First, there's only one presence and one power active in my life, God, the good, omnipotent. And then there is only one presence and one power active in unity, Clear Lake Center, God, the good, omnipotent. And finally, there is only one presence and one power active in our world, God, the good, omnipotent. And then the 5 basic ideas of unity, which are the foundation of unity. God is absolute good, everywhere present. Human beings have a spark of divine spirit within them, the Christ consciousness within. Therefore, they are inherently good. Then, human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Prayer is the process that affirms our connection with God mind and brings forth wisdom, healing, and everything good. But then finally, knowing and understanding universal laws, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And now Bill will bless us with another song. Yay.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night a candle glows. I believe for everyone who goes astray, someone will come to show the way. I believe, I believe. I believe above the storm, the smallest prayer will still be heard. I believe that someone in the great somewhere hears every word. Every time I hear a newborn baby cry, or touch a leaf, or see the sky, I believe, I believe. I believe when I stretch beyond my reach, I grow more free. I believe when I say yes to all I am, God shines through me. There is nothing that can keep my good from me. It's all I am. It's really me. I take my stand. I believe.
Oh, Bill, I believe you are amazing and wonderful for sure.
Thank you.
Oh, really? Oh, but yes, you are, you are. And now I'd like to read the daily word for today for March 22nd. On this Sunday, it is wholeness. Wholeness is the unshakable, eternal truth of me. It is comforting to remember no matter what may happen to me in the world, I am always whole. Even during times of illness or insufficiency, my true nature is of divine wholeness. Worldly situations will always be in a state of flux, changing and shifting in ways I cannot control. I do what I can to tend to my health and other material needs. But I do not worry over things I cannot control. Instead, I rely upon my prayer life and other spiritual practices to claim my wholeness. This is the enduring truth of who I am, who and complete regardless of any outside circumstance or appearance. How liberating it is to know that I am secure in God and complete at all times, spiritually perfect and infinitely blessed. And of course, we are very blessed to have Reverend Bob speaking to us today, helping us to claim our wholeness. Reverend Bob will discuss word power. Thank you, Reverend Bob.
Thank you, Barbara. And yes, the title of my talk is Word Power, Word Power. And Barbara reading about our unity principles, our thoughts are creative, and hopefully put those thoughts into action before we engage our mouth and put these words out there. And we're going to be using some material from a book that I like by Florence Scovel Shinn. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. Florence Scovel Shinn was a New Thought writer in the early 1900s, and she self-published this book back in 1925. And if this is calling to you, if you get on and Google The Game of Life and How to Play It, Florence Scovel Shinn, PDF, you can download a PDF file of this whole book because the copyright was 1925, so that's expired, so it's out there in public domain. And we're going to be using material from chapter 3, which is called The Power of Words. And Florence underscored that chapter title with a quote from the writer of the Gospel of Matthew. For your words you will be justified. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. And the writer of the Gospel of Matthew attributes those to Jesus of Nazareth. And we're going to look at some examples of word power right from her book. In chapter 3, she has two stories that stood out to me as I had read through it. And Florence would have these, she was a metaphysician, a metaphysical healer, and a metaphysical teacher. And she actually had students that come to her and she was teaching them. And she had this group of businessmen who she was teaching how to use these affirmations, and affirming that God was active in their life. Well, these guys were going on good. Their business was booming. And for some reason, they picked up this little trinket called a lucky monkey or some type of trivia thing. And they began looking to the lucky monkey rather than to God for their business. And of course, the inevitable happened, as Florence says, their business went to smash. So she told them, hey, you look to God as your source, not this lucky monkey thing. And it says they threw it down a coal hole. So, and then they shifted back into relying on spirit, and their business prospered. And the second story was about a gal who was in Florence class, and she was walking across the street one day, and she found a horseshoe, and she picked it up, and she said, "This is a sign from God for me to put my trust in spirit and go forward." So it's interesting, how these things that they put their faith in, they went from God to this lucky monkey and fell down, and she picks up the horseshoe and says, "Hey, this is from God, and this is for me to keep my focus on God." There was a sign or a saying in a Bruce Lee movie, which I've also seen in Buddhist literature, and Bruce Lee said, "The finger pointing to the moon is not the moon. The finger pointing to the moon is not the moon." Wow. Sometimes we look at the thing and think it's the object that it's pointing to. We look at that lucky monkey and we'll think that's it. Or this gal is looking at the horseshoe and realizing it's pointing towards God. And, unity folks are not exempt from looking at the thing as being the cause or purpose of things. In the early Unity magazines, Charles Fillmore decided he would put a special affirmation for the month, on a red piece of paper, and it was called the Red Leaf. And he did that so it would stand out in the book, and people would see this red leaf and have this affirmation to use for the week, knowing that it's pointing them towards the one presence, one power, God the good. Well, Unity people have been writing in and saying the miraculous results they had from when they took this red leaf out, and if they had parts of their body that were aching, they were taping it to it, and they were getting healing. And Charles goes, "Oh my God, they've lost the intent of it. They're looking at the thing, the red leaf, rather than as spirit and doing this." So they ended up putting it back on regular white paper, and eventually they did away with it. So Unity folks were not exempt from looking at the thing as rather than looking to spirit. I'm the online Bible teacher for the Unity Urban Ministerial School out of Detroit, Michigan. And when things come across about the Bible, they catch my attention. And I came across this little piece of information about women speaking in the Bible. How many words did women actually speak in the Bible? And an Episcopal priest, Reverend Lindsay Harden Freeman, and 3 other women from her congregation got together and had the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible, and they broke out their little highlighters and their sticky notes and a spreadsheet, and they start writing down and making note of how many words that women in the Bible actually spoke. And her and her group came up with that there were 93 women who speak in the Bible, 49 of which are named, and the women speak a total of 14,056 words collectively. I said, "Wow, isn't that something?" So out of curiosity, our little smartphones, I Googled how many words were spoken by women in the Bible. And artificial intelligence came back and said somewhere between 14,000 and 15,000 words, depending upon the translation or version of the Bible. And they also pointed out there's 4 books that are named after women in the Bible: Judith, Ruth, Esther, and then in the apocryphal book of Suzanne. So I was reflecting on this matriarchal or patriarchal society. These gals made it into scripture. For me, these had to be powerful women who were powerful in their own right and spoke their mind and did things and were taken, into this, because they only made up just a little over 1% of the total words in the Bible, but they've had a great impact on the world by their actions. Women, thank God for them. And I was reflecting, there probably had to be powerful women who stood up in their own right, and I was reflecting on women in my purview that have had that same type of power. And one of them that came to mind was Reverend Dorothy Pearson. Reverend Dorothy and her husband, Phil Pearson, had a television ministry here on the West Coast in the early 50s, I think. It's called The Best Is Yet to Be. And Dorothy, she was a powerful woman. And they also had a ministry here in Sacramento. And she was speaking one Sunday, and another powerful woman showed up for this message. And it spoke to her. And this gal's name was Margie Birch, who later became Margie Brach. And it activated a calling on Margie to become a Unity minister. Well, as Margie and I met later on, started dating, she took me to Unity. It activated stuff in me. And now I am a Unity minister as well. And I was reflecting on that, on how we are connected. And one of the devotionals that I read this morning in my quiet time talked about quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement, where one particle starts to vibrate or is being stimulated, and another particle in another faraway place, because they came from the same source, also becomes stimulated. So as we're not alone. We connect with each other. And also one of the devotionals, this is Lent. And I broke out my book from Charles Fillmore, Keep a True Lent. And I was looking at page 38 of this book, and it had a nice quote by Mr. Fillmore. It came from a 1948 article in Unity magazine. And Charles had written, "Every time we speak, we cause the atoms and cells of our body to tremble and go through certain changes. Not only do we cause the cells and atoms of our body to form new adjustments, but we even affect the cells of the bodies of those whom we associate." So, according to Charles, by our association here on our Unity service on Zoom, things are happening. And whatever's happening out there is also happening in here. The things I was looking at about the powers of words, and sometimes they had good effects and not so good effects. There was a study done in 1978 by these two women psychologists about these high-performing women in society. They're successful in business, successful in academia, successful in their lives, and yet they were feeling they were all a fraud. That if people really knew about them, they would know that they're a fraud. And these two gals called it the imposter syndrome. Now, later studies have showed it affects not only women, but also men too. That people are successful in life, but deep down they say, somebody really knew me, that they know that I'm a fake. It's all smoke and mirrors. And some of the things that they said, these feelings of this not being enough comes from some early childhood experiences. And I was reflecting on that, and I was saying, okay, I was raised in the Roman Catholic faith tradition, and I was even a little altar boy. And when I'd be serving Mass or going to the Mass in Latin, we would be going, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa, through my fault, through my fault, through my most grievous fault. I think, oh my God. And I've later on learned about neuro-linguistic programming. Now where we tap ourselves and we want to remember something. I do that when I close my garage door. I go, garage door is down. I see the light. Through my fault, to my most fearful fault, to my most grievous fault. And I'm tapping my heart center, driving it in there. So I'm wondering where this not enough thing could come from. Well, that could be possible. And if I look back in some of the Bible stories about not being worthy, both the writers of the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke have a story about a Roman centurion. In a nutshell, this Roman centurion was stationed in Capharnaum, and he had a slave who was sick, and he had heard about Jesus of Nazareth being a healer, and he sought him out, and he asked him to come heal his servant. And he said, "You don't even have to come to my house, because I am not worthy that you could come under my roof, but speak the word, and my soul and my servant will be healed." And Jesus was taken aback with this. Here it is, a non-Jew, a Gentile, a Roman soldier, speaking about the power of his words, and praised him for his belief in that. So the story says that very hour, the servant of the centurion was healed. So, that story talks about several spiritual principles. The healing at a distance. Jesus healed a servant who was far away from him. The power of the spoken word, the power of belief, because this soldier believed, and the power of love. The Roman centurion was basically property, but the centurion really cared for this servant boy that he had. He was a slave, but he apparently cared for him deeply. So he had a love for this servant that he had. And I found an interesting tidbit about the power of love. On the coast of Massachusetts, there is a lighthouse, Minot's Lighthouse, Minot's Lighthouse. And it flashes a sequence of 1, 4, 3. I love you. And the Coast Guard decided that they were going to change it to some other thing and whatever. Well, the people in Massachusetts rose up and said, no, you can't do that. And sailors from all over the world said no, because that really spoke to them, because there's many sailors out there and sailing off the coast of Massachusetts, and they seen Minot's Light, and 1, 4, 3, and remind them, I love you, the power of love. So, well, let's take a closer look at this story about the centurion. In Unity, we have this process called metaphysical Bible interpretation, where we take a Bible story, look at the persons, places, things, and events in there, and we have a metaphysical Bible dictionary, we have the revealing word, you can kind of give some definitions of it. Look at these definitions, take it in a quiet time and see what unfolds in that. Well, looking at the Roman centurion. The Roman centurion was a middle grade officer in the Roman legion, and he was in charge of roughly 100 soldiers, depending upon the makeup of the legions at that time. But that's where we get the term centurion, 100 guys. And he had to come up through the ranks. He was a legionnaire, and he came up through the ranks before he became a centurion. And if he had to be at least 30 years of age. So if he entered the military at 16, which is about the age where they would come in, about half his life was spent in the military. And he had to be literate. He had to be able to read the orders from his higher up officers. And his position in battle was at the far right of the line of battle. Now, they carried their shield on their left arm, and the right hand is a sword. So there was nobody on his right side to help him protect him. So it was the most dangerous place to be in a battle. But that was his position. And he had the right to discipline his soldiers that were under him, even to the point of executing them if they failed to perform properly. Now, he was placed in the town of Capharnaum. Now, Capharnaum was one of the seaside fishing village signed by the Sea of Galilee, and it was considered the headquarters, if you were, for Jesus. He worked out in theirs. Now, it was also a place of heavy Jewish resistance to Roman rule. The Jews of Galilee did not like these Roman guys hanging in their area, keeping them under control. And they were very distant from these foreign invaders. Roman legionnaires probably worshipped the god called Mithra. It was a mystery sect where the adherents were actually washed in the blood of a bull that was sacrificed above them on a grate. So this was really called to Roman legionnaires. And so by all appearances, this Roman centurion seeking out Jesus was probably not something that would normally happen. But something happened. And, when I was thinking about the centurion, the only experience I actually had with a centurion was some years ago. Margie and I lived in Modesto, and there was a church in Ceres, California. And on Christmas, they would rent out this farmer's field next to where the church was, and they had a trip to Bethlehem. And we'd go there at night, and there would be one of the church people dressed up in first century Jewish garb, and they would take us on this little trip through this farmer's field. And the leader of the group would say, okay, you're a member of the family of Joshua or something. And whatever you do, stay with us and pay attention and do what you're told to do. So we started off on this trip, and it was a cold night air, and we're coming on along, and up on the left there was a little bonfire, and there was these guys in Roman centurion garb. And they began picking up their swords and shields and lances, and the centurion got on his horse and rode over to us. And he says, Jews, line up on that pathway. And our guy had told us, just pretend you're in first century Palestine and you're one of these Jews coming through this. So we're all standing up, lining up, and this guy hops off his horse and he's going up and down the line, and he goes, you with the ball cap, step forward. That was me. So I stepped forward, and he's right up in my face, and he goes, what's your name, Jew? And I go, Bob. I've been through 3 military boot camps. I've had DIs in my face. This scared me. And I said, oh my God, if I was a Jew in first century Palestine and I was taken back to their camp, I know they wouldn't be giving me any Miranda rights, and I don't think I'd get a call to my lawyer, and I might not even be alive. So these first century Jews, they had this military occupation force that they had to go through. So I think, well, what happened to this centurion that he would seek out a Jewish spiritual teacher? And for me, I think he was awakened to his centurion consciousness. And we all have that centurion consciousness in us. He becomes aware and sees beyond his present circumstances. He looks at his current beliefs and believes that there's probably got to be a better way. And he steps out in courage. He's had courage in other parts of his life. He steps out and encourages and seeks out this spiritual leader to heal his servant. And there's that attachment of not being worthiness. Maybe he had that imposter syndrome. He was successful, whatever. But he tells Jesus, he's not worthy for him to come under his roof. But speak the word, and my servant will be healed. So also, the writer of the Gospel of Luke mentions that the centurion built a synagogue in Capharnaum. So here he is. He's becoming from an occupation force to actually supporting the Jewish faith tradition where they live. Capharnaum in our Metaphysical Bible Dictionary is referred to as a cleansing of consciousness place, a cleansing of consciousness place. In fact, Charles Fillmore, in his first radio talk that he gave at the WOQ Unity-owned radio station, he talked about Capharnaum being a place of cleansing of consciousness. So I think this centurion, he was placed in Capharnaum, and there was a cleansing of his consciousness from his old beliefs to his news. So, when we become aware of spirit in us, which I think that's what happened with this centurion, now we get to step out and be in service to the world, like this guy stepping out and building a synagogue for the Jewish people in Capharnaum. So perhaps we're being called to do something today, step out and to be in service. And for me, the story about the centurion really speaks to me. I'm a retired military officer. I came up through the ranks. I came into the Coast Guard as an enlisted man and left as an officer. And, I was on a spiritual quest in my mid-30s. I remember looking around and, I found different things. And finally, I found unity. It was like, oh, my gosh, wow. There's a place like this? People thinking like I do? Wow. And, I got to be in service. Now, I got to be a licensed teacher. I was on a prayer team. I got to be a licensed teacher, and now I'm an ordained minister. Perhaps we're not all military or soldiers, but we may know soldiers or whatever, or stuff we've read about people in the military, and they make that shift. How to go from this military mindset to, to be a civilian and seeing things a little differently. I think Myrtle, our co-founder of the Unity movement with her husband, Charles, she was a little bit like the centurion. She came up through her Capharnaum, and she led by example. He was a believer in Mithra. She was a Methodist, and she had to look at her beliefs and think there was something different. And the centurion went out and looked at a Jewish healer. Myrtle Fillmore went out and looked at the New Thought healer that came to speak in Kansas City. Myrtle heard, you are a child of God. You do not inherit sickness. And the centurion was thinking, I'm not worthy and for anything to come under my roof. So, and Myrtle led by example. She went to Ohio to Oberlin College, came away with a teaching certificate. And then she went out to Denison, Texas as a school teacher. Here she is. She's been told she was sickly and had to be carefully kept. She was out in the frontiers right above Texas and Oklahoma border, Denison, Texas. And she was a frontier woman. And the quote from one of her, about her in one of our books from James Diller Freeman in Story of Unity, said only one lady in 1,000 would have shown such coolness and bravery. And Neil Volley also spoke about Myrtle in his book about Torchbearer to the Light. And this is, he said about Myrtle, that Myrtle had made this comment. What a joy it is to me to come to touch these young folks and help them to hitch their wagons to stars and to keep their eyes towards the heights. Myrtle, members founded the We Wisdom magazine, designed right for young kids. It went into I think, 1999. So, all righty. Capharnaum. One of the other things that caught me about Myrtle is, bless her heart, she gets married to Charles. On their wedding night, they leave the wedding to get on a train and they go out to Colorado. And he has to travel. They had to travel up these mountains on these sledges pulled by horses. And Myrtle was the only gal there. And she stayed in Silverton, Colorado, while Charles was a mining essayist. And even in June, they had to shake the snow off their tent. And they were living in a tent with their oldest boy, Lowell. When they came back to Kansas City, Charles was into real estate, and he went bust at least twice, I believe. Lost all his fortunes and had to redo it. And, she went to that spiritual teacher who was visiting from Chicago, Dr. E.B. Weeks. When she heard that you are a child of God, you do not inherit sickness, changed her life. Well, Florence Scovel has many good things to say in her book. So if you want to check it out, maybe get on that PDF, download it on your computer, and look through some of the stories. And, we get to recognize the power of our words and the authority that is back of them, and the power that these words, as we speak to that I am the Christ within us. So what if we bump up into a little difficulty in finding that Christ, finding that I am? For me, I think it was as easy as A, B, C. A, become aware of your life circumstances right now and look beyond the situation. We're not our feelings. Feelings are not facts. So looking beyond that to where we are. B, beliefs and believe. Take a look at what your beliefs that you have about life and the situation, and believe that change is possible. I think in our new thought parlance, change your thinking, change your life. Change your thinking, change your life. And finally, C, ABC, courage and Christ. Step out in courage, realizing that you've done some good things in your past and things were successful. Like Florence Scovel gal who found that horseshoe. It says, oh, that's a sign from God. And know that we've used God in other areas of our life, and we can use God again. And know that we are enough. We're more than enough. And we're here, and we are enough. So namaste, dear ones. Let's move into our period of meditative reflection. And I invite you to sit comfortably on your chair, wherever you are. At your home right now, watching on the Zoom or watching on the YouTube later on today. Close your eyes if it's comfortable for you. Or let your vision be softly forward, focusing on nothing but taking in everything. Soft eyes. Feel the pressure of our feet on the floor. The pressure of our body against whatever chair or couch that we're sitting on. Bring our awareness to our breath. Notice the gentle rise and fall of our chest. This wonderful process called respiration, where we inspire air and exhale those waste products that no longer serve our body's greatest good, but are released out into the atmosphere to be reused by any plants that we have in our home or outside in any trees or grass is in front of our houses. The ancient Hebrews used the word ruach for breath. They also used it for wind and for spirit. So as we breathe in, as we inspire, imagine that we're breathing in spirit. And that spirit is connecting with that spark of divinity that is within each and every one of us. And as we exhale, we release any cares and concerns out into the world to be whisked away from wherever we are in our world by that wind blowing it away, clearing it out. And on our next breath, follow that air up through our nasal passages, down to our throat, and into our chest and our lungs. And let our attention focus on our heart center, that wonderful physical organ that sends blood to every cell of our being. And if there's any part of our body temple that needs that healing hand of spirit, I invite you to see in your mind's eye love-filled, blood-filled, spirit-filled blood flowing to that area of our body temple, bathing it in a blue-white light bubble of healing spiritual energy, bringing about healing in a right and perfect way and in the right and perfect time. And if there's any person, place, thing, or event in our life that needs that healing hand of spirit, I invite you to see love-filled, spirit-filled blood flowing from our heart center, turning into a blue-white light bubble and bathing this person, this place, this thing, this event in a blue-white light bubble of healing spiritual energy, bringing about the right and perfect solution at the right and perfect time. Now, Jesus of Nazareth, when asked by his disciples, saying, Lord, teach us how to pray, he told them to go within to the closet of their being, to shut the door to the outside world, and listen for that small, still voice that the Father speaks in, but rewards openly. So we've gone to the closet of our being, not our heart center. We mentally shut the door to that outside world. And we take a few moments and listen in the silence for this small, still voice, or images flashing across the screen of our mind, or thoughts flitting through our mind of what Spirit is calling for us to do today as we gently rest in the silence. And now let's gently bring our awareness back to our physical body temple. Become aware of the presence of our feet on the floor, the pressure of our body against the chair or whatever we're sitting upon, the temperature of their air on our exposed skin, And perhaps in that time of silence, there was something like a small, still voice that spoke to us, or thoughts flashing across the screen of our mind, or images flashing through our mind, or perhaps not. But we have made ourselves open and available to Spirit. And perhaps later today, a phone call from a friend, an email on a computer, a movie we're watching, a billboard we're driving by. Spirit will speak in that wonderful event that's passing before us. So what is Spirit calling for us to do? And now we gently open our right and become fully present. And we listen to some announcements by Brach.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reverend Bob. Wow. Fabulous. Thank you so much. You're such a blessing to us. Okay, well, before Bill sings his closing song, let me give you a few announcements. Your April newsletter will be going out soon, so you'll have all this information. That at church on Easter, Patricia will be there talking about, of course, an Easter resurrection. And there will be a potluck after that service at church. And then again on April 19th, the usual first and third Sunday, Patricia again will be giving the talk, chapter 4 of Lessons in Truth, and she'll be speaking about denials. And that will be our monthly potluck at church on the 19th. And then on the 26th, we will have a YouTube from Patricia, a spring in your step. If you haven't noticed, it is definitely spring. Beautiful. Where are you showing expanding of spirit in your life? Where has your blossoming began to show the fruit of your dedication? And that is a newsletter that you will soon to get from that I'll put in the mail to you. Okay, I just to also remind you that our announcements, always donations are greatly appreciated. Mail to P.O. Box 755, Lower Lake 95457. Then Bill will sing his closing song and we'll unmute for chat. Okay.
Like strangers, that's what we are. Tell me how my heart can fall away so far. Like strangers, how can it be? Only days ago my heart could clearly see. I love you, truly I do. And I know deep in my heart you love me too. I'll forget that I've been fearful. I'll be open like before and swear not to be like strangers anymore. Like strangers, that's what we are. Tell me how my heart can pull away so far. Like strangers, how can it be? Only days ago my heart could clearly see. I love you, truly I do. And I know deep in my heart you love me too. I'll forget that I've been fearful. I'll be open like before and swear not to be like strangers anymore.